There's a particular kind of invisibility that doesn't come from being ignored. It's quieter than that. It shows up when you walk into a room full of voices and movement, and something in you instinctively steps back. Not physically, but in presence. The noise rises, conversations overlap, and instead of entering the moment, you hover just outside it, as if the atmosphere wasn't built for someone like you. For some people, this happens because their inner world has always been louder than whatever is happening around them. They don't vanish out of fear. They drift into the background because it gives them space to process. They observe the room the way others check the weather, taking in subtle shifts, unseen tensions, the pace of interactions. Nothing about their quietness is empty. It's depth holding itself together. Others know invisibility as something learned. Their childhood homes taught them that attention can sting, that speaking too freely invites consequences, that being noticeable makes you vulnerable in ways you can't control. So they adjusted, a little less expression, a little less volume, a way of existing that protected them when they were young and has followed them into adulthood long after the danger faded. And then there are the ones who simply move differently than the spaces they enter. They think slowly in a world that answers quickly. They feel nuances that most people speed past. Their intentions stretch beneath the surface, but most social settings float on top of things. It's not that people overlook them deliberately. Most never learned how to read someone with this kind of depth. Different histories, different instincts, but the same sensation. I'm here, yet somehow not fully part of this. Invisibility isn't always silence. It can show up in the posture you hold when you're unsure whether you're welcome, in the smile you wear to make others comfortable, in the careful way you choose your words because you're tired of being misinterpreted. You carry yourself as if you're borrowing space instead of belonging to it. Over time, this shapes how you speak. You pause longer than necessary. You let others finish even when their sentence has wandered over yours. You weigh your thoughts before sharing them, worried that they might sound too strong, too strange, or too heavy for the moment. And the more you hesitate, the easier it becomes for people to assume you prefer to stay quiet. Moments that seem small to others carry surprising weight to you. Someone cuts in before you finish a thought. Someone forgets that you already answered a question. Someone recounts a memory you were part of, but leaves your presence out of it entirely. None of this means they don't care, but it confirms the story you've been quietly repeating to yourself for years. If I don't push to exist, I might disappear without anyone noticing. What makes invisibility so draining is not the lack of attention. It's the uncertainty about whether your presence ever had an impact. You can stand among people who genuinely like you and still feel strangely peripheral, as if everyone else is woven into the fabric of the room while you're floating above it. The observer experiences this as a mismatch of pace. The conditioned child feels the old instinct to shrink. The deep thinker senses the gap between their inner complexity and the simplicity of the moment. And the room continues without noticing the quiet internal shift happening inside you. This is where the emotional cost begins to form. When you spend years being understated, people build an idea of you based on the version you show them. The steady one, the self-contained one, the one who doesn't seem to need space, so no one thinks to make room. And when you finally want to take up more space, when you want to speak, to be understood, to be met halfway, it feels unnatural, almost abrasive, like you're violating a role you didn't realize you were performing. But invisibility doesn't come from emptiness. It comes from long-held habits, quiet decisions made over years, often without realizing it. The habit of stepping aside, or softening your tone, or letting others move first so you don't collide with them. These are small adjustments, almost invisible themselves, but put together, they create a pattern. You stop expecting to be seen, and eventually your body moves as if being seen isn't an option at all. Yet beneath that habit lies something else, something people rarely notice about those who feel invisible. They have a way of perceiving the world that is unusually sensitive. They sense emotional undercurrents, including the ones others don't acknowledge. They catch discomfort before it becomes conflict. They notice who's struggling, who's faking confidence, who's holding back tears behind a practiced smile. You understand people more than people understand you, and that imbalance is one of the quietest forms of loneliness. One of the most overlooked truths about people who feel invisible is that their sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's a form of intelligence. You read rooms the way others read expressions. You adjust before anyone notices a shift. You anticipate what people need, sometimes faster than they can articulate it themselves. But that same sensitivity can quietly turn into a barrier. When you understand the emotions of others more clearly than you understand your own, you begin shaping yourself around them. You manage the atmosphere instead of participating in it. You stay aware of how everyone else feels, but rarely check in with your own state of mind. And slowly, the role of quiet one becomes something you perform, even when you don't realize you're doing it. You start acting like a background character in spaces where you were meant to exist fully. And this is where the ache begins. Not loud, not dramatic, just a weight that shows up when you're trying to fall asleep. A sense that people know your outline, but not your depth. A suspicion that you could walk away from a room and the energy wouldn't shift at all. It's not about wanting attention. It's about wanting to matter in a way that feels tangible. For the observer, the ache comes from craving connection, but being unsure how to step out from the margins without losing clarity. For the conditioned one, it comes from wanting to be seen, but still carrying the reflex to self-protect. For the deep thinker, it comes from wishing someone would slow down long enough to meet them where their thoughts actually live. Different experiences, but the same question rising quietly in the background. How do I reappear without feeling like I'm forcing myself into places where I don't belong? The answer isn't volume. It isn't confidence in the way the world usually defines it. You don't need to become louder, bolder, or more extroverted. Visibility isn't about noise. It's about presence. The kind that doesn't need to compete to exist. And presence begins with something small, allowing yourself to enter a moment instead of standing beside it. It might look like finishing a sentence even when someone overlaps you slightly, or speaking without rehearsing the perfect version of your thought, or letting your voice carry at its natural volume instead of shrinking it at the last second. It might look like choosing a seat where you can engage rather than one that keeps you safely distant, or letting your expression reveal a little more of what you feel, or simply acknowledging, internally, that your perspective deserves to be part of the conversation. These aren't grand gestures. They're small returns to yourself. Because the opposite of invisibility isn't attention. It's participation. Not forced. Not loud, just real. And as you begin reclaiming those tiny moments, you'll notice something subtle. The room doesn't push back. People don't recoil. The world doesn't collapse because you took up one more inch of emotional space. In fact, most people respond to you with more warmth than you expected, because they finally have something to meet, something to recognize, something to reflect. The quiet observer discovers that clarity and presence can coexist. The conditioned child realizes that being noticed doesn't always lead to harm. The deep thinker finds that some people can understand them once they reveal enough to be understood. The shift isn't cinematic. It's gradual, almost gentle, but it changes the story you tell yourself about who you are in the spaces you enter. And maybe that's the part that matters most. Not becoming the center of the room, but no longer feeling like you vanish the moment you step inside it. Invisibility may have been familiar, even comfortable at times, but it isn't your home. It was a strategy, a shield, a misunderstanding, but not your identity. And the version of you that learned to fade can learn to return slowly, steadily, without betraying the quiet nature that has always protected your depth. You don't need to transform or to rewrite your personality. You only need to stop treating your presence as something fragile, because you were never as transparent as you felt. Somewhere beneath the habits and the reflexes and the years of holding back, there is a fuller version of you waiting for permission to step forward. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. And when that version enters a room, even a loud one, something shifts. Not in the noise, but in you. You recognize yourself again. And for the first time in a long time, visibility feels less like exposure and more like belonging.